Today on Locked On Canadiens, Laval Rocket win their opening game against the Americans, and I try to do math without my co-host supervision.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and I am not joined by my wonderful co-host Ian Boisvert, as he is on vacation this week. However, I do have a special guest co-host coming up on the Friday mailbag. You'll hear all about that in a moment. Today, I want to talk real quick about the Laval Rocket game against Rochester, the opening game of their series. And then I want to do some center comparisons in response to a comment that we received. And then I want to talk real quick about some updates to offer sheeting that we didn't get around to talking about yesterday, but it's really, really, really important in case the Canadiens decide to go that route. So first things first, let me pull up my notes about the Laval Rocket game. Speaking of the Laval Rocket, really, really quickly, my old co-host, my previous co-host, I should say, he's not old, he's young, Scott Matla will be joining me for the mailbag tomorrow. So we're going to get a little bit more insight as to the Laval game because he was actually in Rochester covering it as a credentialed media member. So I'm going to grill him a little bit. There's a fun tidbit about Arbor Jacques that I want to ask about. Yes, Arbor, not Florian. And there's also our mailbag. So he's going to be joining us for a mailbag. We did receive a Laval heavy question from Jacques Face Punch, which I really love. So I will definitely be asking him that. But in the meantime, you can send us mailbag questions, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Leave them in the YouTube comments. Also, we are Locked On Canadiens on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and you can send us mailbag questions at any of those channels. Just make sure you do it by about 5 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, so that because we're going to be recording around 6 p.m. So make sure you get those, and I will prep them for Scott. All right, let's get into the game. That was actually quite an entertaining game. I thought it was really, really thrilling. I truly did. I also thought that there was a little bit of, I want to say, sanctioned violence, because it felt like a very dangerous game, but there wasn't anything that I could call egregious or super eventful, like, say in like a line clearing brawl or anything like that. It just really, I just thought that the everybody was at risk of injury. Like, that's what I felt like. In fact, Xavier Simoneau did have to leave the game. But in general, it was a physical game. It was a very fun game. Like, in my mind, it was a fun game. And so started out with Laval getting into penalty trouble very early. Was not an auspicious start by any means. And I think both teams were just kind of not at their best, if that makes sense. Caden Primo got the start after, I guess, like a week or so of speculation and goalie controversy. Pascal Vincent decided to go with the goalie that got him there, which makes sense. I think it's a luxury to have two goalies who can step in where required. And I did feel that he was going to be doing like a little bit of riding the hot hand. The hot hand in this case would have been Jacob Fowler, with that last game, winning that last game in the previous series. It's just, it's not a big deal. And I think the goalies in this case weren't really the story. Like, Devin Levi played really, really well, but still allowed 5 goals. And so I think everybody was just kind of, I feel like game 2, everybody's going to just be much better. But who stood out to me? In a negative way, Joshua Roy, I feel, didn't have his best game. Didn't really, not endearing himself anymore, or again, right? It's inconsistent. We see him have amazing games, and then we see him following it up with disengaged efforts. Or, in this case, I think he was it the first or the second penalty? I believe he definitely took one of the first two penalties. I want to say it's the second one. But really not ideal, not putting himself in the best position, did not love his game. But on the other side, I adored Owen Beck's game. I feel like he's been driving a lot of the play. And in the playoffs, like I've been watching the Laval Rocket playoff games much more consistently than consistently than the regular season game. And I do feel that Owen Beck is driving play. And I feel really, really positive about the steps that he's taken in the playoffs, right? Like we talk about elevating your game in big moments. Owen Beck has been able to do that. Sean Farrell setting up his teammates. He's at a point per game in the playoffs. Closely behind Alex Barré-Boulet, who unsurprisingly has been magnificent. Shout out to Oliver Kapanen with the game-winning goal. And I do have to say, I thought that David Reinbacher had a strong game, but Logan Mailloux quietly, I think, he's a point per game player so far in the playoffs. He's doing really well. I do think I see a lot of brain farts, but then I see some really good shooting and scoring key points. So overall, I would say that he's having a very good playoff run for for what he is, for his abilities. What else? This was the first game of a 5-game series. The first 2 games will be in Rochester, and then they will come back to Laval to play between 1 and 3 games, depending on how many are necessary. Same deal as with Cleveland earlier. I really did want to see, and again, I might be very spoiled watching the NHL most of the time. I really did want to see them tighten it up. It felt like it was fun and entertaining, but it felt like there were many points where everyone was just kind of unraveling, and then like the game got back together and then unraveled. And I felt that both teams seemed to want it. It wasn't that they didn't want it, right? Like I didn't see any players that like didn't want it, except maybe Joshua Roy. I'm being very mean right now. It's just I really wasn't impressed with this game. It felt like both teams wanted it, but they were going about it the wrong way, if that makes sense. Like I didn't think that this was one for the ages. It was really fun in the moment, but this is not going to go down as one of the greatest AHL games of all time. Absolutely not. So with that, I will repeat that our wonderful Scott Matla will be joining me tomorrow and giving me some insight, or giving all of us some insight as to what it was like to be in the building. As a reminder, the last time he was in that building covering a playoff game, it went to like 5 bazillion overtimes, and he got locked in the building and couldn't leave it. So we can also reminisce about that as well, memories. But yeah, so he was, I believe, going into the dressing room or to the media area. And who does he come across but Arbor Xhekaj giving fighting tips to his brother, which I thought was really funny that, right after the game, a game in which, Florian Xhekaj was also really good, but got penalized, obviously. And he, very much like his brother, I feel is getting too closely watched by the officials and too zealously addressed, I think I would say, by the officials. Anyway, so Scott Matla comes across Arbor Xhekaj giving his brother fighting tips right after a game, right? Like immediately, not like in a downtime or whatever, right after a game that wasn't really about that. He was giving his brother fighting tips, which I thought, first of all, I thought it was really cute that he was in Rochester at all watching. But, to like make a beeline for your brother and start talking to him about his technique right after, I thought it was really funny. It was really cute. I don't know. I'm feeling good about Laval right now. But we'll see what Scott has to say from being in the building, and see if there's any other little tidbits from being there that he can share with us. And that's coming up tomorrow. So once again, make sure any questions about the Rocket or about anything Habs related, you can even ask him who you think or who he thinks the Canadiens should offer sheet, trade for, try to go after. All of that, you can send them to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Leave them on the YouTube comments or on Blue Sky, Instagram, or TikTok. We're at Locked On Canadiens on all of those. All right, coming up next. Yesterday, I had a special guest, and we talked a little bit about centers the Canadiens could go after, and we dismissed a couple outright. And we got a little pushback. So I go back and I do a little bit of I wouldn't say math. I didn't do the same kind of math my co-host does, but I tried to look at some factual information. How about that? Which I will present to you in just one moment here on Locked On Canadians. First, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, as are the NHL playoffs, and every night delivers highlight worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. Whether it's a game winning shot or a breakout player or an overtime goal in a hockey game, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Personally, I like to add to the suspense by adding those same game parlays and a $200 bonus in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins can help you keep it going and bring you closer than ever to the playoffs action. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up because you will get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Head to fanduel.com and place your first $5 bet. Once again, if it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA and us. All right. So yesterday I had the wonderful K Mom of Game Over Montreal on. And if you didn't see yesterday's episode or listen to it, please go check it out. We had a lot of fun. Kay is truly one of my favorite people that I have met through this whole hockey Habs internet endeavor. And I've been at it for a decade and a half. So she's definitely truly a gem, and we had a lot of fun. We talked about the impeccable vibes heading into this off season and next season. We talked about players to target. We talked a little bit about specific players, and we talked also about how much I covet Sidney Crosby. And we talked about how people were floating the idea of Matt Duchene and John Tavares. And we got a little bit of pushback saying, how could we not want John Tavares and Matt Duchene, but want potentially Bo Horvat and Sidney Crosby? So what I did was I pulled up all of their numbers, and we're going to talk about them right now. So clear distinction, obviously. A couple of these are truly impossible unless they waive their no movement / no trade clauses. Bo Horvat has a limited no trade clause, and a couple of these are UFAs. And somebody actually suggested, and this was not the same person who pushed back, somebody suggested Claude Giroux as well. Okay, so let's go through. First of all, let's talk about like these guys and like why we would want them at all given their ages. And it's because Michael Hage is in the pipeline, but is not close to ready, right? Like we're talking not even 2 years, we're talking potentially 3 or 4 years before he's a full-time NHLer, second line center, part of the core of this team, right? So, he's got schooling, he's going to have to develop a little bit more, he's going to have to go through some growing pains. And by the time he can be counted on, it's going to be 3 to 4 years from now, right? So like ideally you're getting a veteran who will no longer want to play for your team at the time that Michael Hage is ready, right? Like you don't have to worry about getting rid of that person. Like he'll come off the books, right? So looking at who we have available, John Tavares is going to be 35 by the time the puck drops next season. He's currently making over $11 million, $11 million, sorry, and he's a UFA. So he's going to be looking for his next contract. Matt Duchene, 34 years old, making $3 million, also going to be a UFA. So that's a huge difference in price already. Claude Giroux's coming off a contract. He's also a UFA. He's 37 years old, though, and he's making $6.5 million. Now, it's not unreasonable to expect that all of these players will be taking a little bit of a drop or staying consistent. And the reason that I say that is that I don't know that Matt Duchene is going to be able to get either a long term or a high number. Like he's made $3 million the past couple of years. Dallas signed him to 1-year deals. And I don't know that they want to let him go, but I also don't know, like if I'm at Duchene and I'm 34 years old and I'm making 3 million, and we'll look at his stats in a second, I would say that I'm worth more than that, right? Like, so I'd be looking for more than that. So the question is this a possibility? I think if you make the right pitch, yes. But there are some issues with his game. But let's go through all of the others first. Sidney Crosby, clearly it would have to be, he has to absolutely only want to come to Montreal for this to happen. I think that if that happens, if there's a possibility that Sidney Crosby wants to come to Montreal, whatever it takes, the Canadiens will make it work, right? Like they will give up enough to get Sidney Crosby, but they won't mortgage their entire future, right? They'll give up people that we love and that we are invested in, but maybe not people who the brass is invested in for being part of a contending lineup. So let's get that out of the way. Like this is like the most pipe dream of all pipe dreams. But he's going to be 38 before the puck drops on the next season. And as you know, he makes $8.7 million. And there's 2 years left on that contract, right? So that would be maybe, 2 years later, he comes off the books. That's great. But again, Sidney Crosby has to want to be here. And again, he's going to be 38 years old. We've seen Ovechkin play at his age and still be able to break records and perform at a high level. And we'll get into the stats in a second because that's really interesting with Sidney Crosby. It's just a kind of contrast, right? And then Claude Giroux making $6.5 million, 37 years old. I think it's reasonable to think that Claude Giroux and John Tavares for sure will have to settle for making less than they currently make if they want another contract. It's just going to be the way it is. They're on the downside of their prime. And as much as they might want, I don't think it'll happen. John Tavares has been vocal about the fact that he didn't even listen to Montreal's pitch when he was a UFA when he left the Islanders and signed with Toronto, right? Like that's a huge thing. Like he didn't want to come here at the time. So I don't know if that's something that has changed, right? Like if he didn't want to come to Montreal at that time, maybe it was the organization, the direction he thought they were going in. Maybe he thought the Leafs were just going in a better direction. Maybe he truly, is like a Leafs fan. I mean, yes, he is a Leafs fan, the Leafs pajamas, blah, blah, blah. Like maybe it really is a desire just to not to play for the Habs. But I have a hard time believing that this new management wouldn't at least get an audience with him if they wanted it. And the key thing is if they wanted it. And then Bo Horvat, you'd have to trade for him. He makes $8.5 million, and there's 6 years left on his deal, but he's the youngest by far of all these players. He just turned 30, so literally a few days ago. So I think for me, like Bo Horvat, again, in this case, like if we're looking at just age, he wins. If we're looking at value for money, I think it's going to decline the longer this contract goes, right? Like, so that $8.5 million is going to look really, really steep at some point over the course of the next 6 years. That's why with Kay yesterday, I talked about retaining salary. So just real quick, I did want to go into one thing and talk about some comparisons because people said that you want Matt Duchene or you don't want Matt Duchene, you don't want John Tavares, but you want Sidney Crosby or Bo Horvat, right? For argument's sake, because somebody suggested Claude Giroux. I'm just looking at his last 3 years. He played almost full seasons. He's only missed one game in the last 3 seasons. So 82 games, 82 games, 82 games. And his point totals are 79, 64, and 50, right? He's making $6.5 million. So already he's kind of he's gone out of the conversation that we're having, right? Like, because the other players, it's not like this. And then we'll get into Matt Duchene. So Matt Duchene, I'm going to do the last 3 years, even though it didn't go so well in Nashville. So 71 games he played and had 56 points. And then the next 2 seasons, 80 games, 82 games, 65 points, 82 points. So this last season, obviously, a great season. But if you're looking at his previous point totals and injury history, it's all over the place. It's truly like, it's not like he makes an average of this many points per year, right? So it's a lot more inconsistent than some of these other guys that we're talking about. So I want to go to John Tavares, who in the last 3 years has played 80 games, 80 games, 75 games. So maybe a little less injury prone than I keep saying he is. But his point totals, 80 points, fantastic. 65 points, not so bad. 74 points, right? So like he's still in the conversation, better than the previous two that we talked about. But still, if there's better, you want to look for better. Now, Bo Horvat, in the last 3 seasons, the first season was split between Vancouver and New York. He played 79 games and he had 70 points. Respectable, right? And then 81 games, 68 points. 81 games, 57 points. So right away, he's kind of in the same conversation as Matt Duchene, really. And then let's look at Sidney Crosby over the last 3 years, because this is my favorite one. 82 games, 80 games. 93 points, 94 points, 91 points. Again, remember, he's the oldest out of all of these guys. Literally the oldest out of all of them. And he still got it. Like, he is still a 90-plus point player at his age. So, like, when you're telling me, like, oh, you don't want Matt Duchene and you don't want John Tavares, but you want Sidney Crosby, the answer is absolutely yes. Yes, the answer is yes. The answer is Sidney Crosby by a mile. And so, I just wanted to point this out because it's literally objective. I didn't have to do any fancy stats. I didn't have to do any like game tape. I didn't have to do any of that. Literally in black and white on a terrible Penguins team, Sidney Crosby is far and away the best player at the oldest age and also making about the average of all of them, right? So, well, no, that's not. Matt Duchene is an outlier, right? But he's not making $11 million. He's making, like, Bo Horvat makes 8.5, right? And Claude Giroux was making 6.5. Like, he's in the middle of that, right? So that's all I'm saying is that, yes, the answer is absolutely unequivocally yes. You want Sidney Crosby over those players. And it shouldn't even be a question, like, at all. So that's all I'm saying. And now that I've got that off my chest, we're going to talk a little bit about the technicalities of offer sheets. And in case the Canadiens want to go that route, just a little bit of information that's been made official the last couple of days. And we will talk about that in just a second. All right. A quick reminder that we have our mailbag episode tomorrow. Please send us your mailbag questions, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, Locked On Canadiens Blue Sky, Locked On Canadiens TikTok, Locked On Canadiens on Instagram, or you can leave them in the YouTube comments. And my special guest tomorrow is Scott Matla. It's going to be really funny if I said Scott Matla 100 times in this episode and then something happens, or like he's out of power, or like his internet goes down or whatever, and he can't come on the show. But in case he can't, send the questions anyway. I will answer them to the best of my ability. And Ian will be back next week. He's taken one extra day on his vacation, which we will not begrudge. Like, I have taken off 3 weeks since he started. 3 different weeks I've taken off. So I really hope he has fun and get some rest. Well, I know he had fun, but I really hope he gets some rest. And he will be back for our Monday episode. All right. Now that housekeeping is out of the way, I have a little bit more housekeeping. I was really passionate about that Sidney Crosby thing. I don't understand why. I think it's just, I just got really upset that people, certain people, were just so violently opposed to this and acting as if it was a stupid notion that Kay and I had. And just, just literally, I didn't have to do anything fancy to say and make it clear that, yes, Sidney Crosby is the choice above all. All right. Sorry. Again, I will let that go. I will. I'm just very passionate about this. I love Sidney Crosby. I want him on my team. I think it's okay. I think it's allowed. I think he would be such a good addition to this team. I think he would take it to the next level. I really, really do. Anyway. But another thing that the Canadiens can do to take this team to the next level is obviously use offer sheets. So the wonderful folks at Puckpedia have this thing called the offer sheet tracker. But before I get into that, I think this happened yesterday or the day before. Yes, it was yesterday, but we had already recorded our episode. And the annual average value thresholds for the compensation tier. So what that means is like the amount of picks or the specific picks you have to give up if you offer sheet a player is dependent on the contract that you sign them to. So this is amazing. If you sign a player on to an offer sheet that's more than $11,700,193, which is a lot. You need your next 4 first round picks, and you have to have your own, right? So it's a steep ask, but if you're offer sheeting that type of a player, which I don't know that there is in this particular offer sheet class, let's say, depending on how you feel about Evan Bouchard, really is how that would go. And then the next tier is between about 9 million to 11 million. You need your next 2 first round picks. You need your next second round pick, and you need your next third round pick. And then it's 7 to 9 million ish. And then again, you need your first, second, and third in the next draft. And then the one, like, I think this would be the tier that is most likely to be featured in an offer sheet. It's between 4,680,000 to 7,020,000, and that is you need your first and your third, right? So, and then I'm not going to go in the other ones. It's like you need your second round pick for the next tier, you need your third round pick for the next tier, and then if you sign a player for less than $1.5 million, you don't need to give up any picks. So the reason that I brought that up is because I really truly think that if the Canadiens were to go out and offer sheet a player, it would be in that mid tier. So, at worst, they would need their first, second, and third round pick. And then, like, ideally, they would be going for a player that they would be signing for and only needing to give up their first round and their third round pick. And so, much like I just said, Evan Bouchard is at the top of the offer sheet eligible players. And I just want to make it really clear. Like, the reason that I have not brought him up so far is because I think that there's not a chance in hell that Edmonton will give him up. Like, that's really the only reason. Closely behind him is Matthew Nyes, Gabe Vilardi, which I've talked about twice now, JJ Peterka, which for some reason I don't think the Canadiens need a winger. Like, that's not their need right now in their lineup. But also just, I don't know. He doesn't appeal to me all that much. Marco Rossi's on that list. Morgan Geeky's on that list. The reason that I brought all of those up is because Marco Rossi is also somebody we are talking about in this city. And so, like, the one other thing, the offer sheet tracker that Puckpedia has, the one other thing that it is useful for is that they sort out which teams have those picks that are required, right? And so, and when I say, like, your next pick, like I said, your next first round, your next whatever, it's not 2025, it's 2026 because of the time period of when you could do an offer sheet. And the Montreal Canadiens have all of the picks that they could possibly need at all of these tiers. So they theoretically could offer sheet at any of these levels. So that's really what I wanted to go over today. And it was just a really long-winded way of saying that. All right, that's it for today's episode. I know I got really, really animated. I care about this team a lot. I'm very, very excited about all of the stuff that they can do in the offseason. I desperately want Sidney Crosby. I'm trying to, like, I was like, shall I do the oratory steps or whatever it is to see? But I think, like, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what he wants. If he wants to stay a Pittsburgh Penguin, even though that team isn't looking very promising the next couple of seasons, and I think we received some news or some rumors about who their next head coach is going to be, and it didn't seem too promising. But either way, like, the Sidney Crosby will only come to Montreal if he wants to come to Montreal. And if he wants to come to Montreal, everyone will make that happen, right? His GM is going to make that happen. This GM is going to make that happen. Everything will fall into place. It's just a matter of if he wants to come or not. And so, that's really why I keep bringing it up. And if he does come here, he will be a magnificent addition to the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know why I just got off tangent again. Again, Sidney Crosby. I think when Ian is here, it reins me in a little bit because he's so sensible that, like, my extreme idealism is kind of tempered a little bit by the fact that like he knows what's what, and he knows that Colorado's probably a better fit for him, and really he also has to want to leave Pittsburgh, which he has made no indication ever of doing that. He wants to stay a Penguin. He re-signed to stay a Penguin. So anyways, it's just I have a lot of feelings is all. And if you want to subscribe to those feelings, I would be very, very grateful. You can find our podcast on Locked On Canadiens on TikTok, Locked On Canadiens on Blue Sky, Locked On Canadiens on Instagram, and Locked On Canadiens at Gmail. Follow us, send us all kinds of stuff. We love seeing pictures of your kids in Habs stuff. We love hearing anecdotes about how you met Arbor Jacki or how you met Christian Dvorak, and he's actually a really nice guy. I made that up, actually. Nobody sends us anything like that. But, if you have, feel free to. Stories of like how you became a Canadiens fan, mailbag questions, all kinds of stuff. We love hearing from you. So please send us emails or messages on any of the channels I just mentioned. My co-hosts can be found all over social media. Maybe it's Ian. I can be found at The Active Stick. I want to thank you all for listening, and I will see you along with my former co-host Scott Matla tomorrow.